Hello, everyone. My name is Krishna Somandepalli. I will be presenting our work on relational affect in dyadic interactions. In this study, we explore the concept of relational affect through analyzing video clips of two people interacting. We found evidence of emergent affective responses that are more attributable to the entire interaction, that is, the relational affect, than toward any single participant in the interaction. We first start off with background and motivation. We define relational affect as the affective responses encompassing emotion, expression, feeling that emerges from an interaction. It is a set of affective responses that emerge from an interaction between two or more people that are more than the sum of its parts. In this study, however, we focus on studying relational affect in an interaction between two individuals, that is, dyadic interactions. We highlight a few key theories and studies that aid in the development of the concept of relational affect, and in this study particularly. Affect control theory is perhaps the first work to examine collaborative nature of social roles and their intersection to affective concepts such as sentiment. It proposed a dimensional space of evaluation, that is good versus bad, and potency, that is strong versus weak, and activity, that is inactive versus lively, to rate emotional interactions. Another concept that can be useful to understand relational affect is interpersonal behavior, that is, studying the behavior of people in the presence of others. The 1982 interpersonal circle, shown in the slide here, presented a comprehensive taxonomy of such behaviors. It is a two-dimensional model that organizes behaviors into 16 segments, each of which represents a different combination of affiliation and dominance. In this present work, we draw from these theories related to interpersonal behavior, but unlike these methodologies, we do not fix a taxonomy or set of dimensions for the raters to describe relational experiences. Instead, we rely on free-form descriptions from raters. Much like a recent study by Cohen and Keltner, who used free-form responses to develop a taxonomy for how people perceive facially expressed emotions. How is relational affect valuable for HCI? In many instances where technology is used in social interaction, understanding and modeling relational affect can be valuable. This can apply to settings such as therapist-client interactions and computer-mediated interactions such as customer care support involving humans and digital agents such like chatbots. In these scenarios, modeling or examining individual affective experiences may not adequately represent the complete affective experience because interactions themselves can give rise to unique affective experiences. Consider the case of doctor-patient interaction. Politeness norms may encourage both parties to express neutral or positive emotions individually, despite how the overall interaction may unfold. What may be more informative then is to evaluate for potential presence of negatively or positively valenced relational affect. For example, is the overall interaction tense, or how is the rapport? Next, we dive into our study. The study sample consisted of 10-second video clips of people interacting with each other, filmed with a static camera. Previous studies have shown that reliable affect perception is possible even in short duration clips, so we constrained the duration to 10 seconds. We only included natural interactions of two people and excluded instances where one of the participants would break the fourth wall or talk into a camera as opposed with each other. An example of an interaction is shown here. The rating task consists of three main components. First, the video clip or the stimulus and accompanying instructions that the raters first look at. Second, the raters were asked to describe the situational context so as to ground themselves for the subsequent questions, followed by one-word descriptions of accompanying instructions for the individual emotion. The two people in the interactions are referred to as person on the left and person on the right for ease. And finally, the relational affect, which we functionally describe as the overall feeling of the interaction between two people in the video. Raters were asked to avoid generic one-word descriptions such as good or bad. Thus, our analysis sample consisted of 140 videos, resulting in a total of 650 ratings, that is, the descriptions of perceived emotions and reasons why for each individual in the interaction and that of the overall interaction. A few examples of how raters describe individual emotion and relational affect is shown in this slide. Note distinct concepts such as gratitude, which are only perceived in the context of an interaction, as opposed to concepts like engaged. Whereas emotions such as happy can be either individual or relational affect. Here are some more examples of one-word descriptions that raters used to describe based on the frequency of use. Notice distinct relational concepts such as friendly, cordial, combative, and amicable, which can only be observed in the context of an interaction. We also conducted a frequency analysis to examine if raters used more unique concepts to describe relational affect than individual emotion by comparing the commonly used one-word descriptions between individual emotions of the person on the left and the person on the right, and the overall affect. For example, in the analysis here, 98 unique terms were used to describe individual emotion of the person on the left. Not only did raters use a larger vocabulary to describe relational affect, the concepts were 1.7 times more likely not to overlap with how they describe individual emotion, suggesting the presence of relational affect as distinct from individual emotion. While the one-word descriptions provided a high-level view of the differences between relational and individual affect, we had also asked raters to describe the reasoning as to why they picked these descriptions. Next, we discuss these reasoning schemes and how they're different between the two concepts. We highlight a few examples of how raters describe individual emotion and relational affect, along with the reasons why they thought so. Notice the reliance on cues such as smiling or head nodding to describe individual emotion. This is congruent with how humans perceive individual emotion per basic emotion theory. Whereas in the case of relational affect, the reasoning is tightly coupled with the interaction itself or the situation. For example, the woman talking seems to care about the woman on the right. This captures a unique aspect of interaction that is more than how one perceives the emotion from any single participant. In a qualitative analysis, we also found that raters rarely reasoned about relational affect with the expressions of the individuals involved, unlike reasoning about an individual's emotions, suggesting different human mental models underlying corresponding affective inferences. Finally, we note that for ease of analysis and developing a proof of concept, we restricted the rater responses to individual emotion and the relational affect to one-word responses. While this allowed us to easily compare the vocabulary spaces of the two emotion types, it also restricted the amount of detail and nuance that raters could convey. In future, we want to explore using sentence embeddings to analyze these free-form responses to provide a more nuanced taxonomic space for relational affect and understand how it differs from individual emotion perception. To summarize, in the study, we explored the concept of relational affect through analyzing video clips of two people interacting. We found evidence for emergent affective responses that are more attributable to the entire reaction than any single participant in the interaction, which we refer to as relational affect. Thank you. And here are my co-authors, Oliver and Brendan.